I'm Cassidy Quinn, and this is Mentally Together. Because whether you can see it on the surface or not, we're all just trying to keep ourselves mentally together. And no matter what our brains are experiencing, we're not alone, we're together. Now, I always say that at the beginning of every episode of Mentally Together. Maybe you forgot that because I haven't put an episode out in multiple months at this point, and I will explain that if you don't already follow me on any other social media platforms and know why I haven't posted in a while. But I always start asking, how are you? And I know you cannot actually answer through the podcast. However, you could go send me a message on Instagram or Twitter or wherever you can find me, Cassidy Quinn, or Mentally Together. We're Mentally Together Pod on Instagram. I genuinely would love to know how you are doing. But in this episode, I am going to talk a lot about how I am doing, because that is why you have not heard from me here on the podcast in a long time. Like 3 months, maybe? It originally started by me going to Tokyo to cover the Summer Olympics. And so while I was in Tokyo, I decided to take a break from putting out full episodes of the podcast. Instead, I was going to put out 10-minute meditations for you, because for me, meditating is so helpful to my brain. But then I put out a couple of those, and then the Olympics just got chaotic, and I stopped having time to come up with and put together those meditations. And then I came back from Tokyo, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna take like a week off. We're gonna rest. We're gonna refresh our body and our brain. And then, about 4 days after I got back from Tokyo, maybe it was 5-6 days, I don't know. I genuinely do not remember this period of time. My mom passed away, and it was not something that like I expected or knew was coming. And I know however you ever lose a parent, it's not something you can like mentally prepare for, but I was very, very much not mentally prepared. And now it's been just over 2 months since then. Some days it feels like it's been 5 seconds, and other times it feels like it's been years since I got to talk to my mom and give my mom a hug and tell her in person, I love you. If you are watching the video version of this podcast, then you might notice behind me, I have lots of lovely things. There's always plants behind me, obviously, but now I have a picture of my family back there. I have a little bouquet of dried flowers because so many people sent me flowers in the immediate aftermath of my mom passing away. And number one, that is a weird feeling. I don't know if you've lost someone you love, maybe you can relate to this. So many people sent flowers, and it was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thoughts and gestures. However, when they all started arriving, it was like, oh, great, it's this time. We are the people getting all of these flowers. And then a few days go by, and the flowers that get sent to you start dying, or they're already dead, obviously, once they get cut and you have them in your house. But then they start getting sad and smelly, and the fruit flies start swarming around them. And then you're like, oh, now this is just like some really, really sad flowers. So anyway, I took some of those flowers and made a little bouquet that hypothetically I can have forever. And they're in a little vase that one of my mom's really good friends gave me. Thank you, Kathleen. And she said when her mom passed away, someone gave her a vase, and whenever she uses it, it reminds her of her mom. And now I have something to do the same for me. So I kind of set up this little area behind me as a tribute to my mom, just a little like mom shrine. And honestly, some nights when I can't fall asleep, I come in here to my office and I sit and I look at a picture of my mom and I talk to her and cry a lot. And she cannot talk back in the normal way, like that I'm talking to you through this microphone right now, but I feel like she can talk in my brain. And she's still there, obviously. But it feels nice to kind of have some like representations of her and reminders of her just in the background of me always. Speaking of not posting an episode in a long time, the last full episode that I actually put out was with a Portland author and illustrator, Tracy Subisak, who talked about helping friends through a sad time. And the sad time that she referred to was losing her mother. And that is so weirdly perfect that that's the last episode that I put out for you and that I put together for me. And I'll be honest, I haven't gone back and listened to it yet, but I know it will be helpful when I do. There are some things from that episode that Tracy told me that I have been hearing in my head lately. Like, she told me that she had designated grieving time or designated sad time after her mom passed away, where she would literally set a time every day to just cry and feel all the feelings. And I haven't done that specifically. I haven't said this set time is for being sad, but I have realized that kind of every day there has to be one big sad time, at least one. Sometimes there's many more than that. But I have to give myself a time and space to let it out however it comes, or else it will just build up. And if I don't let it out for maybe a couple days, then it just bubbles. That's the bubbling sound effect. And then like overflows. And that's okay too. You know, I always heard about grief. And like when my mom first passed away, lots of people told me, take it one day at a time. Every day is different. And I listened to that and I knew that in theory. But now, after a couple months of doing it, I know that to be so very true. Some days, it doesn't feel like the whole world is crushing down on me. And some days, it does. Every day, I know that my mom is not physically in this world anymore. But you know, there were days where I didn't talk to my mom when she was alive, and I wish that was not true. I wish I'd talk to her every single day. But so there are days where it doesn't feel like that crazy that I can't just pick up the phone and call her. And then there's days where I do something and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to my mom about this right now. I have to. And my mom and dad used to make fun of me because I would call them and they would just keep talking to me. I would keep talking to them and I would never be the one to hang up the phone. And so they would have to find a reason eventually to be like, we need to eat dinner or whatever they were doing. We need to finish this episode of the TV show that you called us during the middle of. And so we need to hang up now. It was never me. I would just keep talking. And so now I get to just keep talking to my mom, and you cannot hang up the phone, Mom, okay? I hope you are listening. I know you listen to, I think, every episode of the podcast, and I hope that you still get to keep listening. You've probably just been listening to me all the time the past 2 months, and I don't know what you think of any of this, but I don't know what to think of it either. Mother. But speaking of talking to my mom, one thing that my therapist suggested is that if I feel like talking to my mom and letting all that out, I can just record a voice memo in my phone, which is something I've never really done before, but now I have done it a lot. I have a lot of voice memos in my phone titled different things like, I love you, Mom, or I miss you, Mom, or Mom, I need to talk to you about this, because if I'm driving and I get sad, or I'm out walking Summit, my pup, and I get sad or whatever, I just want to tell my mom something, I can just record it in my phone and no one else ever has to hear it. Except now you know that those voice memos exist, so please don't steal my phone and listen to them, because it would just be weird for you to listen to them, I'll be honest. But on that note, therapy has been so useful. I know I put out an episode of Mentally Together after I had my first ever therapy session, which I think was back in May. And when I first started, I'm sure it always is this way when you start with a new therapist. It takes a while to build a relationship and get really into it, because the first few times you obviously have to explain yourself, explain your mental state, explain your past, your present, what you want in the future, and eventually you can get into it. But we were finally maybe gonna like get into it, and then this happened. So now I'm very, very, very glad. I am even more grateful that I started therapy earlier this year, because otherwise I would have had to start fresh with someone and be like, I'm in crisis now, I need a therapist right this second, which also would have been okay. I would have figured it out, but I'm very glad that I had a therapist before the crisis kicked in. And before my mom passed away, I was seeing my therapist virtually every 2 or 3 weeks, and now I've been doing it every week. And it has been very, very useful just to have someone on the other end of my webcam who is not in the daily life. Like, I can talk to my dad and my brother and Tucker and some of my friends about everything going on in my brain right now, but it feels good to have someone who is impartial. I know I'm saying the most obvious thing. This is like literally the point of therapy, is to have someone impartial who can listen and give feedback and help you figure out how to get through all of it. And they're not part of it, so it doesn't actually matter to them, but they care about you and they're on your side. Anyway, point is, it's been very, very helpful. She's given me some like exercises and things to try, some of which I've done. Other homework I haven't really done. One thing that has been helpful that my therapist suggested, but I also already knew that this would be helpful, but I just was resisting it so much, is journaling, writing in my journal. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, that earlier this year, maybe, is 2021 the longest year ever? Because I don't know. Maybe it's just my grief brain, and that this, since August, like feels like a new lifetime, and so anything before that doesn't exist, but things that I started in early 2021 feel like years ago. I'm pretty sure that it was earlier this year that I really started writing in my journal, and after my mom passed away, the first few weeks, I knew that it would be good to write in my journal and let some of those feelings out in that way, but I just didn't want to do it. It felt like so much effort to attempt to slow down the thoughts and feelings enough to write them out, if that makes sense. So actually, after about a week or two after my mom passed away, I decided I was just going to start a Google Doc, and I wrote down whatever I could remember from each day since it happened, just so that I could get some of the feelings and things out. But typing, for some reason, felt easier than handwriting. Now, what I've been trying to do is every morning, doing a little meditation, writing in my journal, actually handwriting. I got some fun new pens. I actually got them in Tokyo, so that was kind of like perfect timing. And I have extra pens because I bought extra for my mom and my brother, and now I have some extra pens that remind me of my mom. Anyway, moral of the story, writing with fun pens in my journal feels nice. And still difficult, but I also, like, it has actually helped me sort through multiple thought trains, anxiety trains about my mom. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, I hate journaling, that's also fine. If you never want to journal and it's not useful for you, but if you have that inkling that it's been useful for you in the past, but you're resisting it, maybe let this be a little sign that try it again. But also, like I said, if journaling just isn't for you, that's totally fine. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I'm here to tell you what's been helpful for me. Also, if I do like what in my head, I don't want to say should, but what feels good to me, what can set my brain up for as good of a day as possible right now, is get up, meditate, write in my journal, pull a tarot card, because apparently that's something I'm getting into these days, and then do some kind of crafty thing. My mom I don't want to talk about my mom in past tense, and she still, like, exists in the universe, and so whatever qualities she had alive as a human, she still has now, wherever she is, right? So I can say things in the present. My mom is the most creative person that I have ever met in my entire life. Like, everything she did was creative. Everything she did as a mom, everything she made for us. She literally wrote song parodies for our outgoing messages on our voicemail machine. Like, hundreds of them probably when we were kids. Different ones for different seasons. Whatever. I digress. My mom, one of the things I loved doing with her was any kind of craft. My mom loved to do ceramics or sew, or for some reason, whenever I try to think of all the crafty things my mom loves to do, they leave my brain. But the point is, that's something that makes me feel connected to my mom, which is another thing my therapist told me to do. Like, think of something that can make you feel connected to your mom. Maybe something that you used to do with her, or you wanted to do with her, or used to talk to her about, or whatever. And so I've been trying to find little crafty things to do in my days. Currently, I'm attempting to learn watercolors, and I am not a painter. Like, I like to think of myself as a creative person, but I'm creative at certain things, and then like drawing, painting, I just have a gut reaction that I'm bad at it. And right now, it does not matter if I am good at something, bad at something. It's just for me, okay? Like, hypothetically, some of my watercolors are somewhere in the background behind me, but thanks to my camera settings, they're blurry. You can't really see them. So my watercolors do not need to be for anyone except for myself. And so as bad as they look, it does not matter. It's just to feel connected to my mom and my body and to like get some emotions out via crafting. So that's felt good. Also, taking my dog Summit on walks feels good. I know that I need to move my body, and there are days where I have no desire to do that, and sometimes I just give into it, okay? And luckily, Summit is so wonderful and cuddly and floofy that he will just cuddle into the couch with me. Like, somehow he has figured out, and I know my dog is not the only one who's done this, but he figures out when it's just like a cuddle and be sad day and do nothing day. And then he knows when it's a day that mom might be up for like a little adventure. Like, yeah, I'm gonna have some energy. So mom says we need to go outside and get some sunshine and fresh air and go on a little hike or a run or whatever. But then on other days, like, there were 2 days a couple weeks ago where he slept until 2:00 in the afternoon with me. And then I got up and he didn't even act like, oh my gosh, I have to go to the bathroom so bad. He didn't even want to go outside. It was 2:00 in the afternoon and we had just woken up. Oh my gosh. Anyway, dogs are great. Dogs are wonderful. And I am also very glad. I guess I got Summit and started therapy in the same month, and neither of which I knew at the time how helpful they would be to me in this crisis that I did not see coming later in the year. So, wow. Thank you, universe, or whatever led to those two things happening in order to help me now. Because cuddling my dang 80-pound giant puppy has been so wonderful and helpful. And sometimes I literally have to think, okay, Summit, what does he need? Water, food, and exercise. So, hey, Cassidy, maybe you need water, food, and exercise. What? He doesn't meditate, so I can't tell Summit he needs to meditate. Actually, I don't know if that's true, because when I meditate, sometimes he'll just like sit there and lay with his eyes closed, so maybe he's meditating. Wow. Anyway, those are the things that have been really helpful. Also, my wonderful boyfriend Tucker obviously has been very helpful talking to my dad and my brother, because they are also very, very sad. But I'm very, 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 very grateful that I have them and that I love them and they love me, because we can get through this together. Oh, that's going to be the thing that makes me cry? I swear, when I turn on the camera or the microphone in this case, somehow a lot of times, like, the tears that were coming before I turned the camera on are not there. And that does not mean that I am not spending a lot of today crying. It just means that in this moment, I go into like talking to you mode and the tears shut off. And that's the weird thing about grief. Well, not just one. There's a lot of weird things about grief. But one of them is that obviously, unless you talk about it to somebody, that somebody does not know how you are truly feeling. Like, maybe I'm walking down the street sobbing and someone walks by and they're like, oh, that girl's really sad. Something sad must have happened to her. But I also might be walking down the street, smiling, walking my dog, going, wow, the sun's out today. This is beautiful. Wow, look at the fall colors in the trees. Oh, look at that jack-o'-lantern on their porch. This is so fun. And also at the same time, inside me, I can be like super, super sad. And I guess that's also very true about depression, which, fun fact, yes, I'm going to talk about the 5 stages of grief right now that you always hear about. One of those stages is depression. So if you are someone like me who has already got some depression in your brain, then you get to the depression stage and it feels somewhat familiar, but also not, because it's a very different kind of depression. But it's very weird to be like, oh yeah, I'm pretty depressed right now, but I think I should be. Like, I talked to my psychiatrist the other day about my antidepressants, and she was like, I mean, we could up them, but I feel like, nah. And I was like, no, I don't want to, because I just, like, need to be sad. I should be depressed right now, right? Like, my brain is sad, and that's okay. Like, it's not okay, but it is okay. And those stages of grief, by the way, I've heard about them forever, but I have lived in a very, very lucky kind of grief-free bubble in my life. I've had grandparents pass away, I've had dogs pass away, but those are all things that you expect to happen, and, like, none of them are my mom. But this is my first time really going through, like, intense grief. The grief monster, as I keep referring to it to my therapist. And so I was thinking to myself, okay, what's with these stages of grief? I don't know if this is really what I'm going through, because the stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I feel like a lot of times we interpret that as we're going through this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one. Like, acceptance is at the end, and then we are done grieving. And there are days where I feel that acceptance, and then there are days where I feel the depression, and then there's days where I feel bargaining, like, what if I did this? What if I did this? Like, can't I change something? There are denial days, and there are anger days. And what I have learned, partly from reading a book that has been super helpful to me. The book is by a woman named Megan Devine, who unfortunately knows grief all too well personally. And so she wrote a book called It's Okay That You're Not Okay. And that was super helpful to me for many, many reasons. But one of the things she talks about in that book is that the 5 stages of grief are not something that you just, like, go through. One, okay, check that off. Next one, check that off, check that off, check that off. And now we're done. Great, woohoo! Like, grief will, for me, she said this in her book, and this feels very true to me. I will never be done grieving. I will never just, like, get through it and everything will be fine. It might feel fine for a little while. It might pop back up. I might pop back into the depression phase. Like, my therapist also told me that, yes, those 5 stages, they exist. They are all things probably that I will experience at some point, but you can hop around. You might be here for a day or an hour or 5 minutes and then go to the next one and then hop back and then go to the next one. So, yeah, grief definitely, I'm realizing more every single day that it's something that I did not understand before I experienced it. And that's given me so much empathy for anyone. And it's also made me feel really bad about how I helped or didn't help grieving people around me in my life in the past. Like, I just keep thinking back to so many friends who have lost a loved one in the last few years and how I did not know what to say. And for me, sometimes when I don't know what to say, I don't say anything. But right now, if I have friends that don't say anything, or like the ones that are super meaningful to me are the friends that just say something, even if it's just like, this sucks. I'm really sorry. I don't know what to say. This sucks. I'm here if you want to talk about it. And that's it. That's accurate. Or friends being like, hey, here's a gift card. Go eat some food, okay? I know food is something that might slip your mind a lot right now, so just go order something and just take that stress off the table. Or like, can I bring you over some coffee? Or can I take care of your dog for a night? Oh my gosh. And then some friends or some people in my life, they keep reaching out 2 months later, and I hope they'll keep reaching out 3 months later, 5 months later, 5 years from now, right? Because now I understand that the grieving just continues. Like, I don't know if there will ever be a point at which I'm no longer grieving my mom. Like, I hope that it doesn't hurt this bad forever, but also I want it to, in a way. And that's another thing Megan Devine talks about in that book, It's Okay That You're Not Okay, that when her husband Matt passed away, she wasn't worried that she would never feel good again. She was more scared that she would feel good. And that is something that resonates with me a lot because, yeah, I know that I need to feel good. Like, that's what life is about. I shouldn't, my mom wouldn't want me to just like sit around and be sad for the rest of my life. But at the same time, feeling good again makes me feel more distant from my mom. And that's weird, It like makes it seem like this period of the grieving is over. Even like I stayed up in Seattle with my dad and my brother for 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks after my mom passed away. And when I eventually left and went back to Portland, that felt really weird because it was like, oh shoot, this first chunk is over. And this whole thing is not over, obviously, by any means, but like, ooh, okay, that little tick on the timeline is there. And now we move to the next one, and that's super weird. And that's something I'm trying to figure out every single day. Like, what is the next tick in the timeline? And what feels good? And that's really what I'm trying to do for myself, is just ask myself every single day, multiple times a day, what feels good? And if something doesn't feel good, I don't want to do it. Last night, I had plans. I thought I was going to go meet up with some friends. And then in the moment, I was like, you know what? I'm sad and I'm tired and I don't feel like socializing. I socialized the day before and that's my limit. I'm done. I have never really been great at setting boundaries. And then thank you, Mother. Thank you to this crisis for throwing me in the middle of, it is necessary to set boundaries or I will not make it through this. Yeah, like setting, okay, I can hang out, but only for an hour or 2 hours. Let's set a time limit. Let's set maybe like one big socializing a week. And by big, I mean like 1 or 2 people. And that has to be okay. And anyone that doesn't understand that isn't going to understand that. And that's fine, but I just won't hang out with you right now. But most people will understand that and know that that's my bandwidth. And then there's boundaries. And that's that. Pretty sure I said in another episode of the podcast, or maybe it was an Instagram post, I don't know. I just feel like boundaries are the word of 2021. And yep, that became a big word for me, that's for sure. Have you been putting off a visit to the doctor for way too long? Yeah, I do that too. And when I finally do call and make an appointment, the doctor's office usually tells me the next available appointment is months away. That's why I've started going to Zoom Care. With locations in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Colorado, Zoom Care offers same-day doctor visits that you can book online or from their app. Yep, you don't have to talk to anyone on the phone. They even offer mental health visits, where you can speak to a board-certified mental health provider in person or through video. Zoom Care is where I went last year for my ADHD diagnosis, and they made the process so simple. They really took away my stress. So if you're ready to make an appointment of your own, head to zoomcare.com. That's Zoomcare, ZOOMCARE.com.
Now, back to the show.
Speaking of words that have become very big to me, I want to share with you a few things that my mom has taught me and instilled in me over the years, or just qualities about my mom that I think are so amazing and I'm going to try my best to keep them in me and like do them in my life. Another one, trust. My mom is a very, very trusting human, and she always just saw the good in people and assumed they were going to do the right thing. And I think that's something that I practice a lot. I mean, I put out so much information about myself. I think I'm pretty vulnerable and open on this podcast, for example, and I trust that, you guys are going to do with that information what you will, and you're going to be nice, and every time I share anything on social media, anywhere the past 2 months, I've been so nervous, like, what are people going to say? Is this going to be too sad? Like, I've always been the girl that posts happy things, except now I've been doing mental health content, so I guess it all goes along with that, because sometimes the mental health stuff is very sad, as is my mental health sometimes, but every time I post something and I'm nervous, you are all just like wonderful humans that make me feel like I'm not alone and that it's okay, or it's not okay, but it's okay that it's not okay. And yeah, I appreciate that a lot. So thanks for letting me trust you and having it be a good thing. Next thing is empathy and non-judgment. And that is a huge reason that I started this entire podcast. Like I just said, I didn't understand what it was like to grieve the loss of a loved one until I actually went through it. And that sucks that I had to go through it in order to understand what others are going through. But a lot of times that's the case. But I don't want that to have to be the case. I don't think everyone should have to go through everything shitty before they can have empathy for someone going through something shitty. And so therefore, I just want to talk about all the shitty things so that we can share our own stories and then go, oh, I understand that and I empathize, if that makes sense. And my mom just had or has that in her. She can connect with any person. Like, she could always find a common ground and seem to understand and just be able to like see people's soul and see the good in them. Also, just enjoying the simple things. When I think about things that made my mom happy, it was small things like taking the dog on a walk, playing bananagrams, or playing spider solitaire, or doing a crossword puzzle, or going out to a movie, or eating licorice or Greek food. And I actually just started a series of videos on my YouTube channel where I'm gonna do things like that, just things that I hope will hypothetically bring me at least a moment of joy and calm, and document them, because I know there can be joy in the middle of all this sadness. It has to be true. I can't just be sad forever, even though that is very hard to understand, that the happy and the sad can all exist at the same time. And the last one is magic. My mom believed that things existed in the world that we could not see with our human eyes, like witches and fairies and frogs. If you look super closely, you can see I have a little frog necklace on that my cousin Lori gave me the weekend of my mom's celebration of life. And so I have this little frog, my mom, with me all the time around my neck. But what my mom loves about frogs is that they are magic. Like, they go from tadpole to just sprouting legs and becoming a frog. Like, can we just think about for a moment how cool and crazy frogs are? They are magic. So magic is something that I am holding on to a lot these days. Magic that means I can sit here in my office and talk to the wall and be talking to my mother. Magic that means I go to a movie and my mom can be sitting right next to me sharing my pizza. Magic that means when I go camping, like I did last month, and a little frog hops by, that can be my mom. Like, I swear my mom saved us the perfect camping spot. Ugh, long story, but it was wonderful. And magic that means there can still be sparkle in the world and joy and wonderful things. I've been thinking a lot lately about how depression can often, to me, feel like the world just kind of loses its sparkle. And I've been tuning back into that lately with my mindfulness and meditation practices. And now when I go on a walk with Summit, I can see literal sparkle, like the puddle on the street can sparkle and the little raindrops on the leaves in the tree and the tree leaves falling on the ground or whatever, like the sun. Things can sparkle and the world can be sparkly, and maybe that's my mom being like, hey, look, the world can still be nice and bright and I'm still here in all of the nature, right? In magic, that means I should stop recording this podcast before I tire my brain out way too much. And magic, that means my mom can be out there somewhere listening to this episode of Mentally Together. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this in this moment. One thing I've been experiencing in my grief is a lot of brain fog and exhaustion, and I've been reading about how that is not rare at all. That's pretty normal in grief. Also, like, everything is normal. If you are grieving right now, if you're going through a sad time, like, anything you're feeling is probably normal, okay? Even if there are days when you're like, just this whole being alive thing feels like a lot of effort. Do I really want to do it? Yes, you do, okay? That's also me telling myself that. But, like, any feelings you have are normal, and if you say them out loud to a friend or your therapist or whoever will listen, or yourself or your mom, or write in your journal, even if your mom isn't alive, okay? You can talk to her. See, I do it all the time. Any of what you're feeling is normal and okay, even if it's also not okay at all. But yeah, right now, my brain, I'm getting to a point where it feels closer to fully functioning, at least for chunks of the day. But there have been many, many days in the past couple of months where I just don't feel like I can form full sentences. And yeah, guess that's normal. So I am going to finish saying full sentences to you for the day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Mentally Together. I really, really appreciate you. And I think you're wonderful. And I hope you can do something today that brings you a little bit of joy. Something that will make your brain feel a little bit better. Write in your journal, go on a walk with your dog or by yourself or your imaginary dog. Talk to someone you've lost that you really love. Just like talk to them out loud. Something that will bring you maybe a smile, maybe some tears, but maybe those tears are what you need to get out in order to lead to a smile, right? That's what I'm telling myself, at least a lot of the time. So I, Cassidy Quinn, will see you right back here next week, next Monday, for a new episode with an awesome guest. We're getting back to doing that. I recorded it the other day, and you know what? It actually felt really nice to like have a real, raw, genuine conversation like we do all the time on the podcast. I just hadn't done it in a really long time, and I am excited. That's a strong word, but I am excited to be back doing this and talking to you. So if you've made it this far, thank you. You're wonderful. I love you. And remember, we are all just trying to keep ourselves mentally together. That is so true! More true than ever, baby! Mentally Together is produced, hosted, and edited by Cassidy Quinn in collaboration with Koba FM, a podcast network that is all about community, baby!